So at the very beginning, when you start your company, everyone's an individual contributor. You can't afford to have someone sitting back and saying, oh, I'm the executive chairman. I don't do anything. I just tell you guys what to do. Guess what, executive chairman? Go grab the garbage pail and take out trash.
Welcome back to Innovate or Evaporate, where we explore the relentless pace of change and the innovators who drive it. I'm your host, Toph Day. Today we have Chris Ye, the co-author of the New York Times bestseller Blitzscaling, and a leading expert on high-growth startups and technology. Chris has spent his career advising some of the most innovative companies in the world, helping them grow from small startups to global powerhouses. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Toph. I got to say, one of the funny things is when I was young, my late grandfather had trouble pronouncing my name, so my nickname in Chinese became Tofu. So very similar to Toph.
Really?
Yeah.
How you spell that?
I don't think we spelled it.
It's just a name.
It's just a name. I assume there was a Chinese spelling, but I have no idea. It's just a nickname.
That is awesome. Well, we are here at Rally, and you just flew from Singapore. You were at another show.
Yes.
And what would tell us about that? Where'd you come from?
So I was in Singapore. It's the first time I'd been to Singapore in 25 years, if you can believe that. I was at the Super Return show, Super Return Asia, speaking about venture capital. And I spent most of the week in Singapore. Amazing place, incredible people, incredible food, safe, clean, orderly. It's really far away. And it was 12 time zones distant from Indianapolis. So right now it is about 10 a.m. here in Indianapolis. It's 10 p.m. in Singapore.
You're going to take a nap a little bit later, I guess, right?
I'm going to try.
And then we have a great event for you tonight with your new fund.
Yes.
Right, so we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Sounds good.
So I want to go back. So your book, Blitzscaling, your keynote this morning, I found just fascinating. Entrepreneurship, as a founder, so I'm an 8X founder. It is so hard,
yes,
but so exhilarating,
yes,
right? You've been in this world of entrepreneurship and investing for some time now. For 30 years. So we're about the same, 30 years for me as well. And so before we get to some of the present day, like just the last 2 years, right? All the changes we've endured and are going through, and we haven't even seen anything yet, right? Let's go back in time a little bit.
Yes.
One of the things you said on stage this morning that I think was really powerful is you're like, when you start a business as an entrepreneur, the first-time entrepreneur especially, I'm a real important new entrepreneur and I'm going to build my business. And you talk about being present, showing up, right? Networking, building relationships. Let's start off there and back to your 23-year-old self.
Yes.
You told a story this morning about a party you didn't go to.
Yes. So back when I started my very first company, and in fact, I think I was at that point 25 years old, 24 years old. Yeah, 24 years old. I was just focused on working the whole time. You would find me just doing emails and sending out messages and making calls and things like that. And I would work late, get up early, work early, and I never went out to anything. And I remember I got invited to a launch party for a company because the second employee of the company was a former colleague of mine. I worked with him at D.E. Shaw & Company. He'd moved out to Silicon Valley. He's like, hey, come to the launch party. And I was like, this company's going to be dead in 6 months. They're wasting money on a launch party. This is a waste of time. And I didn't go. Now, that company was Google. And at the time, the company had about 10 employees. And I didn't go to the frickin' launch party. Now, is it possible that if I'd gone to the launch party, I might have met Larry and Sergey and said, well, screw this, I'm going to join this company and become a billionaire? Quite possibly. Because the funny thing is, and it gets even worse, the first employee of Google after Larry and Sergey, Craig Silverstein, is actually an old friend of my wife's from college.
That's a small world.
And so, I look at this, I'm like, okay, great. So I have all these connections to this company, one of the most important companies of all time, and I did nothing.
That's amazing. I heard a story once. You might know if this is, you can fact check this for me.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been curious if it's true or not, but I heard that in the early days when they were taking their algorithm around,
yes,
people were like, we don't need another Alta Vista. We already have search engines. It's not going to get any better. And they almost didn't raise like their first $100,000.
That's right.
Is that true?
That is absolutely true. Back in those days, people thought there's no need for another search engine. Yeah. The game is done. Yeah. All right, there's Yahoo, there's Alta Vista, there's Lycos, there's Excite, there's all these things. In fact, there's too many. Yeah. Why would anyone bother starting another one? And something very important happened for the founders. So Larry and Sergey were talking with various folks, and mostly they were being turned down. And then they went to talk with Andy Bechtolsheim. Andy Bechtolsheim is a legend of Silicon Valley. He's one of the co-founders of Sun Microsystems. He made another huge fortune building networking companies. And they met up with Andy, and they told him what they were doing. And Andy, who is a great guy, who I've met a couple of times, just an amazing, amazing guy, said, okay. And he wrote a check for $250,000 and handed it to them. And at the time, they hadn't incorporated or started a bank account. So that was their cue to incorporate and start a bank account. Andy Bechtolsheim invested $250,000. Andy Bechtolsheim would be a billionaire today, even if he had never founded Sun Microsystems, even if he had never founded Granite Systems or any of the other companies that he founded. He would be a billionaire today just off that one investment.
That is amazing. That's amazing. So as we go through your story today and you share, there's going to be a ton of insights you're going to share about your journey as an entrepreneur, investor, AI, et cetera, blitzscaling. I want to kind of maybe use an acronym that we like to talk about a lot called MELFO. And so it's kind of like market, entrepreneur, the team, legal, financial, and then operations.
Yep.
And so let's start off with market. A lot of founders, it seems like today, if you don't have a prototype, if you haven't built something, because you should be able to at this point, right?
We just saw people vibe code products in 18 hours.
Yeah, we had, 10, 12 teams compete for 18 hours straight, all built products, fully functional products, prototypes that you could actually try to go sell to a target market. So how do you think about going narrow and deep and the going after your first customers and marrying that up with the concepts that you have in blitzscaling?
So this is one of those things that I think most people don't say, but it's one of the things that is a top piece of advice I give to entrepreneurs. So when it comes to the market, people think about the market and they think about, let me look at this analyst report or these projections and see this total available market of, 100 billion or whatever.
$1 trillion.
$1 trillion. And what I tell people about market instead is figure out who the customer is. Like we talk about markets, what we really mean are customers.
Yep.
Who are the customers? And are these customers that you really care about? Because you're going to spend years of your life trying to make their lives better. If you care about the customers, if you really love the customers you're trying to serve, you're going to be in a lot better shape.
Yeah. One thing that also struck me this morning, thinking about market and customers, storytelling.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really fascinating that you used film for a lot of examples.
Yes.
Right, as you talked about storytelling. What are some of the best practices that come to top of mind as we think about telling our stories as a founder, how to evoke that emotion out of the customer, to be a raving fan?
Absolutely. And it's no mistake and no coincidence that I use film, because film is the thing that really affects all of us. It's where we take most of our stories in. And one of the things I joke is I say, half the things that are invented in this world, in the startup world, are because somebody saw it in a movie.
Yep.
And we automatically, just like the classic example is when the Google guys were building Google Glass, they were debating what color the text should be in the projection.
Interesting.
And they're like, well, it obviously should be red. And like, why red? Oh, because, red, it's less strain on the eyes. And actually, no, that's not the case. It's because like in Terminator, in RoboCop, in all these things, it's always red. And so, of course, they want to make it like that. And it turns out red is the worst color. It looks good on the screen, but it's terrible for actually doing work. So it really is something where films really help tell the story. Now, how do you tell the story? Well, I often do a 2-hour workshop on storytelling. I'm going to condense it down to 2 minutes right now. So the first thing is there's what I call the Pixar formula. And it's how all these stories are told.
Yes.
And it's how you should tell your story. This formula goes, once upon a time, there was a blank, right? So there's your protagonist. Every day, that protagonist blanked. So you're setting up the status quo. Then one day, blank happens. That's the inciting incidents. And as a result, X happened, then Y happened, then Z happened. And after all of that, the protagonist's life was changed in the following ways. So that formula works because we are inherently built to look for these stories where we see, here's the story, here's the thing that happens, here's the thing that actually transforms that person's life. And that's the story you want to tell. Now, again, the story is a little different depending on whether you're telling it to your customer, or you're telling it to an employee, or you're telling it to an investor. Their life is going to be transformed in different ways, but the core thing is, here is how your life is going to be transformed.
Do you still teach these classes?
I do, actually. I'm going to be teaching one of these to the Stanford Business School alumni coming up in October.
Now, so if I'm a founder that's living in, Arkansas, can I sign up for these classes, or do I have to be a student of Stanford?
Right now, I don't know. I think you have to be an alum.
Okay.
I really have. I've done them in a couple of other places as well. There have been a couple of programs I've done it for. Maybe I should set it up and give people a chance to really take the
As
class.
if you're not busy enough already.
Virtually, yeah. As if I'm not busy enough already. But I love storytelling. It's really important to me.
All right, so let's go into team building. The
Yes.
entrepreneur, the founder, and the importance or lack of importance of the ability to sell and the ability to build.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think about that? Founding teams. How do you avoid having founders that maybe aren't pulling their weight? How do you think about that? And the initial team building,
Yeah.
and then maybe even kind of fast forward, like hit it at the very beginning. We're founding a company. And then you talked about, like this morning, I've had companies over 100 employees. It changes drastically at kind of 0 to 30, 100, and then beyond. How do you think about team building?
Well, the first thing, and this is actually one of the transitions of blitzscaling that I didn't explain today because there wasn't enough time, you have to go from individual contributor to manager to executive. So at the very beginning, when you start your company, everyone's an individual contributor. You can't afford to have someone sitting back and saying, oh, I'm the executive chairman. I don't do anything. I just tell you guys what to do. Guess what, executive chairman? Go grab the garbage pail and take out trash.
That's exactly right.
And so that is what everyone has to focus on. And again, I think you put it best. You got to either make it or build it, and eventually you got to count it.
Yes.
But those are the things you have to do, because guess what? The IRS ain't going to be happy if you don't actually have records. So those are the non-negotiable essentials. And so everyone has to be able to understand how they help make it, how they help sell it, or how they help count it.
Yeah. So that leads us into we're getting illegal. And we see a lot of companies where they may not, if it's a first-time founder especially, even vesting between founders, right? My last company I had, my partner and I vested over 4 years. So if you fly the coop, it was painful. You got $2,500.
That's right.
If you flew the coop within 4 years. And we also see investors like angels that might not be in innovation or tech. They might be in real estate or something.
Right.
And they think they're going to get paid back in the next round. And I've seen even 10x pref at pre-seed stage.
Which is insane.
And so let's talk about legal hygiene and some of the big things that you've seen where people kind of get themselves cornered in a box.
Well, one of the things I like to tell people is corporate governance doesn't matter until it matters, and then it's everything.
Yep.
And we've seen this happen even to the biggest of startups. We saw this huge OpenAI thing that happened a year ago, which was the board of directors basically turfed out the CEO, Sam Altman, and it was this giant struggle, and it was because of corporate governance. They have a strange corporate governance structure where they had a nonprofit board, and they didn't have a traditional for-profit board, but the point is, governance matters, paper matters, the legal side matters. And in fact, one of the things I tell entrepreneurs all the time is put it in writing, spend the money if you have to, because it will cost you a lot more in the long run.
Yep.
And you've got to put it in writing because human nature can get ugly when large amounts of money are involved. The ability to self-justify anything is possible. That's why it's good for founders to be on a vesting schedule. That's why it's good to have all these things done in an agreement, because if you don't, guess what? You may think that you know someone, but when there's millions of dollars on the line, you'd be surprised at what they'd be willing to do. And so the ideal thing, of course, is to have lawyers who are willing to work with you. One of the great things about Silicon Valley is the lawyers, because they've seen so many success stories, are willing to defer their fees, are willing to say, listen, what we're going to do is we're going to do the work for you. When you get funded, you pay us. If you don't get funded, we write it off.
Yep.
And that really helps founders get started on the right legal footing, as opposed to many other places where, because the founders simply can't afford legal help, they go without it and they discover, much to their dismay, that's going to cost them even more in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. The now in Silicon Valley, do most companies start off as LLCs as well and convert to C Corps later, or do they start off as C Corp out of the gate?
No, they start up as C Corps out of the gate. So oftentimes they'll even start off as a Delaware C Corp out of the gate.
Yeah.
And again, it's simply because the expectation of these startups is rapid growth. And so they incorporate, and the expectation is now we're going to raise money and go. And again, it's fine to start off as an LLC. The reason people start off as an LLC, obviously, is the tax advantages during the early days. But
and you got to chase those K1s.
You got to chase, oh my God, the bane of my existence. I still need to chase them down. We got the tax extension filing coming up. I still need 1 or 2 K1s left. Oh my God. But I think that if you are ready to grow, then just flip over to a C corporation.
Yep. What do you see in San Francisco then in terms of the law firms and their willingness to invest right in those startups? Do they have kind of is there a bogey where they're like, okay, we're kind of in for 25 or 50 or 100? Like, what's that kind of
so
threshold?
So in the past, it's increased over time with inflation. I think when I started, it was probably 25, then it got to 50. These days, it might be 75 or close to 100.
Yeah.
But for that, they'll do all the work to incorporate. They'll do all the work to set everything up.
And is that basically a handshake that the entrepreneur doesn't change law firms after the?
That's right. It's a handshake, but guess what? Those law firms deal with a lot of VC firms. They have good connections with all of them. Founders that don't keep agreements, that word gets around.
That word gets around fast, right? It's a small world anywhere we go.
Absolutely.
So, all right, let's dive into a little bit of the financial hygiene and the importance of entrepreneurs. It's going to be $1 billion. We're going to go to the moon, and we're going to be at X, Y, and Z over the next 36 months. It never happens that way, right?
That's right. Sometimes it even happens faster, but it's never exactly what you plan.
Never exactly right. So let's talk about the importance of just really pausing and thinking through your business and the unit economics and what I really need to get this thing to the next step, and the importance of a model, even if it's a simple model to start with. What are your thoughts around that?
So I tell every entrepreneur, you should have a model for understanding your business. It's wrong.
Yes, it's always wrong.
But that doesn't matter. Having a model is what allows other people to see how you think about the business. It brings a level of rigor. Otherwise, it's too easy to just hand wave everything. Right? And the same holds true for unit economics. Now, within Blitzscaling, we often say that you need to have high margins someday. It doesn't have to be right away.
Right.
But you need to have visibility on how you're going to get to those high margins as opposed to, oh, well, I'm just going to sell it for below cost and eventually it's going to work out. Make it up in volume.
Exactly. All right, so then operational. So, and especially, this has always been critical, but now with the onset of modern technology and tools, right, AI, the importance of the entire team. There's no, these departments. There really cannot be silos in a business at any stage anymore, and it's more critical now than ever that everybody owns the data, right? Everybody owns the results. Everybody owns revenue. Everybody owns your cost structure, and that importance of that data being shared across the entire org, and that's not just somebody's job over here in a corner, right? Like marketing and sales and how all these things tie together. What thoughts do you have to share, about that, best practices?
So I think one of the things that you need to do is you need to educate. You can't just assume, oh, well, the numbers are available on the intranet or whatever, and people will figure it out. No. Again, how you pay attention, how you direct attention is really important to people. So one of the things you can do at your all-staff meeting is to have a rotating explainer where people from different departments talk about what it is that they do and how it's relevant to the overall mission. Because you can't expect software developers to understand accounting without somebody teaching them. You can't expect accountants to understand software development without somebody teaching them. Right. So that's a big part of it. I think that the level of transparency, hey, it's what you're comfortable with. There's a company called Buffer, run by a founder named Joel Gascoigne, who I met when he was first starting off. I've always been a huge admirer of his because he's pursued radical transparency. They have all the information available on the internet, including the compensation packages for every employee.
That's interesting.
Not just within the company, on the internet.
On the internet.
Now, that's probably farther than most people are willing to go. I'm guessing if I go to your companies, that's not how they do it. But it does illustrate that it's possible for a successful company to push transparency to those extremes. So don't tell me you can't do it.
Yeah, that's amazing. How about board structure? Let's talk about boards a little bit. Having I love it when, if an investor writes a check, they think they just automatically deserve a board seat, and how destructive that can be, and how you can end up with a dysfunctional board, a board that's way too big at a certain stage. What are your thoughts on board structures?
So you have to think about the board as an essential part of the toolkit for the CEO or the founder. Right? Ultimately, the board exists for governance reasons, for good reasons, and really, their only true function is to hire and fire the CEO. Everything else is window dressing.
Yep.
And if you're the CEO, that may seem scary. Oh my God, but no, what you should say is, okay, well, these are my accountability partners.
Yes.
And there are also people who I can turn to for advice and help and other things. Now, how do you build a great board? Well, first of all, the bigger the board, the harder it is to manage.
Yes.
So absolutely, you should strive to keep the board small. It's very easy when you go from round to round to just add more board members. It's harder to have that tough negotiation and say, okay, here's what the board structure is going to be with this next round. But I think that's the right way to do it, even if it means kicking some people off. Have those hard conversations so that the conversations that occur around the board meeting table are actually more effective. Second thing, what's really important for the board is to build those social relationships between the board members as well. Even though they only meet very occasionally, they need to be a team. They need to actually like each other. And so, like, for example, when I was in Singapore, we actually did a board dinner for one of my companies because I was in Singapore and the lead investor is based in Singapore and the founder flew into Singapore. We did it, even though it was inconvenient, because it's important to build those relationships. We all spent a couple hours together. Rest assured, that will help the next time that we have a board meeting. Finally, the last thing to remember as the CEO is you have to manage the board. It's part of your job as CEO to manage the board.
Yes.
And so what you need to do is, people can take it too far. They can start to view board meetings as theater, where they've carefully choreographed every single thing in advance. I'm like, yeah, you should plan it out, make it efficient. But the board meeting is there in order for the board members to interact. It's not just for you to convey information to them in a scripted way. And so if you want to convey that information, try to convey as much of it beforehand as possible. Get those board packets out in advance, not just the day before.
Yes.
And talk with the board members to see if they have any questions that they can resolve so that you're not scrambling and trying to come up with information on the fly in the board meeting. The board meeting should be, we all know what the information is. We've asked the clarifying questions already. Now we're using this time to actually discuss what it is that we recommend the CEO do. And by the way, the CEO makes the final call.
So, is there a how many boards have you always served on all time versus now?
I have served on 5 or 6 boards. I try to avoid it now, but sometimes it's unavoidable.
Yep. So on those boards and in conversations with other board members, et cetera, is there a high level kind of structure of board meetings that you've seen to be more successful, like time boxing various things and the time you spend on strategy, as you just mentioned, versus the nuts and bolts of the P&L? Any recommendations for kind of structure for CEOs?
So I think that almost any structure can work if it is the thing that actually helps the company's business. For one company, that may be really focused on go-to-market. For another company, it may be really focused on product. That may change over time. So having a specific list of we cover this, then we cover this, and we cover this. Like, no, the purpose of the board meeting is to help you as the CEO actually make it work. But what I do know is you should have an agenda. You should have time boxes. You can always choose to ignore them if you want, but set expectations. The more detailed expectations you set, the easier the board meeting will run.
So let's go backwards in time again real quick.
Yeah.
And we'll go back to your personal journey. And how many companies did you start?
I have been a founder or founding team of 3.5 venture-backed companies.
So can we hit a couple of those examples?
Yes.
So like, when did you realize that you wanted to be a founder and entrepreneur in college and high school?
Nope.
Was it you entered the workforce and you saw these opportunities? Talk to us about some of those moments that were pivotal when you realized, hey, I'm going to go for this. And what was your decision-making process and your thought process?
Absolutely. So I never grew up thinking I'd be an entrepreneur. There are some entrepreneurs who are these entrepreneurs who start off, they're in kindergarten, they're selling stuff on the playground, stuff like that. That was not me at all. I did not necessarily have that in mind. What ended up happening is I went to Stanford for my undergrad, graduated in 1994, 1995, And it happened to be that Stanford, being very much on the cutting edge of technology, introduced me to the internet. So I get to Stanford, and they're like, okay, you're here as a freshman. Here's how you get email. Email. Oh, wow, that's cool. And then by the time I graduated, that's when the web started to exist.
I graduated from college in '92. We were issued emails. And what are we going to do with that thing?
Well, that's the thing. Email is like many other things, has a network effect. Until
Right.
your friends have email, it's not
Right.
really that useful.
Yeah.
But by that time, I wanted to keep in touch with folks who were, not at my school, like people who I'd gone to school with in high school or what have you. Email was a good way to do that. Beyond that, we actually physically wrote letters.
Right.
If you can believe that. We would physically write letters to people. Crazy. Email was so much better. So by the time I graduated, I could say, hey, I think the internet's going to change everything. It's something I use every single day. It's super important to me. So I don't know anything about entrepreneurship. I don't know about any of this stuff, but I do know I want to get involved with the internet, something that's going to change the world. So I ended up joining D.E. Shaw and Company, the company that Jeff Bezos worked for before he started Amazon. He had left 18 months before I got there, so I don't know him personally. He didn't invite me to the wedding. No rocket rides for me. But I went to D.E. Shaw because they were working on startups. Now, in some ways, it was incredibly stupid because there I was in Silicon Valley in 1994, 1995, and I leave to go to Cambridge, Massachusetts to work on the internet for a company in which I have no equity. On the one hand, that's really stupid. But on the other hand, it was a great learning experience. D.E. Shaw is packed to the gills with some of the smartest people in the world. And I got to learn very deeply how software development works, how computer science works, all these things. And as my wife points out, if I hadn't gone to Cambridge, Massachusetts, I wouldn't have met her. So in the end, it's got to all be worthwhile. But after joining D.E. Shaw, that's when I realized, oh, actually, that's what this is. That's what entrepreneurship is, bringing something new into the world. I want to do this. Because one of the other things I realized very quickly about entrepreneurship is I often tell people you should either be an entrepreneur or you should go work at the very late stage. It's a classic sort of barbell or hourglass approach. That's because if you're an entrepreneur, you take on huge risks, but you have orders of magnitude more equity than you'd ever otherwise have. And if you are an employee, it's better to be on a rocket ship that's already heading into orbit, where
Yes.
you're pretty sure you're going to make it into orbit. And in between, it's a lot tougher.
Yes.
Right? If you're an early employee of a startup, you have 1/10, 100th the amount of equity that the founder has, but you're still taking on almost the same amount of risk.
That's really interesting. Wow, and you have the valley of death in between.
Now, that being said, every entrepreneur needs employees, so thank goodness they're willing to do that. But if you have the stomach to be an entrepreneur, it's a better deal.
Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't thought about it that way, and that's a really good point. When did you you started with angel investing?
Yes.
Right? So when did that start for you?
I made my first angel investment in 2006.
2006?
So it's been
It's been a while.
nearly 20 years.
Yeah.
What happened was a friend of mine who was a classmate from business school came to me and said, hey, I want your advice on my company. He asked me the advice. I learned about what the company did. And at the end of it, I said the fateful words, so are you raising money for this? He said, yes, as a matter of fact. And I've got some money from my old boss, the founder of Palm. And I'm like, okay, well, it seems like smart people are involved. And I ended up investing, I think, $5,000 or something like that. And that's how it began. And once the seal was broken, I was like, oh, I can do this? Now, one of the worst possible things happened next, which is my next investment. I invested in a company out of Y Combinator, met the founder, liked what he was doing, wrote him a check. And 3 months later, the company sold and made me money. That's like the worst thing that can happen to an angel investor because it makes you think, I know what I'm doing.
Golden touch.
Oh my God, I've got the golden touch. Instead of thinking, wow, thank God I was lucky. You're like, oh man, I'm a genius. And so I started investing more, and lo and behold, those did not instantly turn into more money.
Yep.
And in fact, the angel investments that I made in my career, the two most valuable investments, the ones that actually turned into significant outcomes for me, one took 9 years to pay off, and one of them took 14 years to pay off.
Yeah, I think the statistic out there now are like with a startup company, the harvest period, you're in that 15-year
oh my God.
plus or minus time frame.
Oh my God, it took forever. And let me tell you, I had to answer to my wife who was like, so how much of our money have you put into these things? where did it all go? When are we getting any of it back? And I'm like, hopefully someday, but maybe
Right.
not.
One thing, let's talk about angel investing for a moment, because I think there's, and hopefully some of the folks who will be listening to this are actually angel investors, so
Yeah.
we can like help them with a little advice, experience sharing.
Yes.
So I've done some angel investing myself, and I see, as businesses and the ability to start a business, et cetera, raising money democratizes throughout more and more markets. There's a lot of folks out there who have some money, and they decide to get into angel investing, and they might be in a real estate industry or whatever it might be, and those are very different dynamic, right?
Very different.
Those deals are very different. And so, I'm gonna go ahead and dip my toe into this, and I'm gonna self-allocate $100,000 or $250,000 or $500,000, and they will meet that friend of a friend who's building the next Google meets, LinkedIn meets, pick a buzzword, and this is gonna be the next thing. It's gonna be amazing, and they will. Let's say they allocate $250,000, and they drop $250,000.
Oh, that's a bad idea.
Bad. And so what we try to also educate angel investors is whatever your allocation is, try to get into a syndication group or something so that you can place many bets, and then also hopefully you have the opportunity to follow on.
Yeah.
So can you talk about that a little bit and the importance of spreading that
Absolutely.
risk?
So the first thing is, don't get into angel investing unless you allocate enough capital to make at least 20 investments,
Yes.
preferably 30.
Yep.
And that's because there's been a lot of Monte Carlo simulations done on the diversification required to get returns. And you've got to make a lot of these investments. You drop all your money in one place. Hey, guess what? It's like going to the casino and saying, put it all in 36 red. All right, great. If you succeed, obviously you're going to really get a great result. But chances are you're not.
Right.
And so building that 20 to 30 company portfolio is essential. What you mentioned about syndication or angel clubs and things like that, that's great because you're learning from other people. Again, the fact that other people invest in something does not make it necessarily a sure thing. It absolutely does not. But if you're in it with other people, it actually helps add to the elements of it. So I often tell people with angel investing, if you're angel investing for the purposes of making money, you're an idiot. Because unless you're incredibly rich, like let's say you allocated $500,000 to angel investing, and you're going to do 25 deals. So you're going to do $20,000 each into 25 different deals. And you spend all this time working on these different deals. Now, if you'd just given that money to a venture capitalist instead, you'd be paying a 2% management fee on that $500,000. So $10,000 a year and 20% of your profits. Now, as you're running around, making 25 investments, spending hours looking at deals and things like that, what wage did you pay yourself?
Right.
Instead of giving the money to a venture capitalist? Yeah. It's probably sub-minimum wage.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's like...
Probably like 30 cents an hour.
Exactly. It's like other investing as well. Like, do you think I'm going to be able to beat Fidelity and Vanguard and those guys because I happen to see something in my spare time and they work on it full time?
Right.
But angel investing can still be an amazing thing to do if you really love that direct interaction with the founders and if you love learning from the process, because that's what you don't learn by investing with a venture firm. You don't get to spend as much time with the founders. Hopefully you do get to meet some of them at the annual meetings and things like that, but you're probably not hanging out with them on a regular basis. Angel investing is all about the experience you get, not about the financial returns.
A friend of mine, Jerry Hayes, who's a professor at IU, developed a game. His company's called Dorio, like the godfather of venture capital. And it's all about teaching the mechanics of, his goal is, from an accredited investor standpoint, we can ultimately move away from this, $1 million net worth without your home and 200,000 single or 400,000.
Exactly. It's like, I can't remember, but you have to show the income in consecutive years, your tax statement.
Right.
Yeah.
And so his goal is that, we can teach, we can get the SEC to agree to some different rules, because you and I can go download a gambling app right now, to your point earlier about roulette. I can go place a $5,000 bet on, the Fever game.
That's right.
Friday night, but I can't invest in a startup, right? And so his whole thought is that, if we can educate and train, could that suffice?
Yeah.
Right. For to let other people kind of get into the game, which I think is an interesting theory. Speaking of placing lots of bets.
Yes.
I heard a stat. This is probably a year or two ago, and so Stanford kind of got into the game of like tech transfer, all these things.
That's right.
A long time ago, 40, years ago, maybe?
50.
50 years ago?
50 years ago.
And they have been a part of or behind with tech transfer, whatever, like 5,000 or 6,000 companies.
Yeah.
And like 1,443 of those ever made $1.
Yep.
And like 50 or 60 ever made over $1 million. And so like this is a shots on goal.
Absolutely.
game.
Power law.
Power law. It really is true. What do you think about IP, tech transfer universities? Who's doing it well? Who's not doing it well? What do you think the best recipe for success is?
So, strangely enough, I've actually had some experience with tech transfer. I did a project earlier in my career. We were working with the U.S. military on tech transfer, and tech transfer is tough. It can absolutely generate a lot of value, but there are a lot of pitfalls. So Stanford is probably the flagship for how to do this.
Yep.
And of course, there's a lot of famous examples of Stanford making huge amounts of money off of Genentech and Amgen and Google and things like that. That's where a lot of that money comes
Yes.
from. That's why Stanford has such an enormous endowment, among other
Yes.
things. But the key is that Stanford has always been very liberal with the licensing terms and has been really focused on making it easy for people to license and leverage the IP as opposed to trying to theoretically maximize it in some way.
Right.
I saw this with the projects I did with the U.S. military. So we had entrepreneurs who were looking to license some of the technology that had been developed in the research labs. And the issue was, if they went to license the technology from the researcher, we also told them you have to reach an agreement with the researcher. So the military had done a good job of structuring the deals, but the most promising one, the researcher wouldn't come to a deal, was too greedy.
Yep.
Wasn't willing to say, you know what, I want a piece of a smaller pie,
Yes.
as opposed to I want everything.
Yeah.
And so he tried to hold up the entrepreneur.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
And then you can't attract good entrepreneurs if you're trying to hold on to too much,
Absolutely.
right? I so agree with that. It's almost like trying to hold on to what you'll never get because you're not going to be able to attract the people.
100% of nothing is still nothing.
It's still nothing. That's so funny. So, all right, well, let's talk about the modern day ways of building businesses. And you're getting ready to can we talk about your fund?
Absolutely.
So you're in the process of raising a fund right now. And so I'd like to just dive into kind of both sides of that equation. Can you tell us about the fund that you're raising and what you want to go after, what types of companies?
Yeah, so we're raising an AI fund. It's called the Blitzscaling AI Fund, and we're looking to invest in early stage AI companies. So seed, pre-seed, Series A companies. We're looking for companies that we think are potential blitzscalers. That is, they're going after a valuable winner-take-most market, a Ricky Bobby market, as I said on stage earlier today, and where we think they have the go-to-market strategy that will allow them to win that market. And so we do a ton of things in order to find these deals. I think I mentioned on stage, we have something called the Llama Lounge in Silicon Valley where we do 10 events a year. About 300 AI founders come in. 10 of them get to demo on the demo floor. There's 100 VCs, 100 corporate buyers, and that's a huge source of deal flow for us. We also have a version of this around the country and around the world called AI Salon. It's now in 60 plus different cities. Would love to see it happen here in Indianapolis. I didn't check to see whether we have one here, but would love to have one here as well. And again, same sort of thing. People get the demo, gives us this proprietary deal flow to find the kinds of companies we're looking for. And again, we want to go early. Because with AI, a lot of people have heard, oh my God, OpenAI is worth $500 billion, all these companies are raising money at these high valuations. That's great. But I feel like there's a lot of nifty 50 going on. If you remember from the 1960s, the nifty 50 were the stocks that everyone said, oh, these are the big winners, everyone's got to pile into them. I feel like a lot of that's happening with AI at the later stages. Maybe it'll work out, but I feel like the only chance to really get those huge multiples, drive traditional venture returns is to go early.
How many markets do you think you will cover, like really going deep looking for those opportunities? And is it global or is it more US based, or how do you think about that?
So we're absolutely primarily US based and focused, and we think that the majority of the deals will probably even just come from Silicon Valley because that's the cradle of AI.
Yep.
But we are looking all over the world, and that's why I travel to Singapore, to Zurich, to Lucerne, to Seoul, to Tokyo, to Riyadh, to Abu Dhabi, Dubai. The list goes on and on. I was in London a couple of weeks ago. So we think that there's great minds everywhere. That's one of the reasons I'm here in Indianapolis.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So, and then you're a great entree, and from a relationships are so critical, right?
Yeah.
Showing up at the Google party, building those relationships early. Talk about a little bit about the relationships between venture capitalists.
Yes.
Right? And I've had people ask me like, well, don't you find such and such, as a competitor? I'm curious how what that mindset is in Silicon Valley, because we don't view any investor like as a competitor. And I know some deals get competitive,
Right.
Right. When you're looking for a lead investor, et cetera. But what is the mindset in Silicon Valley from a competition standpoint between VCs?
So it really depends on the stage and nature of the VC firms. So there absolutely is a highly competitive group of VCs. If you start thinking about the key Series A firms, where guess what? The founder's going to raise money. They're probably only going to have room for one lead investor. They're going to choose Sequoia or Greylock or General Catalyst. And those companies compete with each other. Absolutely, 100%. Because there can only be one lead investor.
Right.
However, you don't have to be the lead investor to make billions of dollars off of an investment.
Right.
There are enormous opportunities, even if you're just part of the syndicate. So we at Blitzscaling Ventures are very keen on collaborating with other VCs. In fact, we create VC-based community. We have one community called the Flow Riders, the AI Flow Riders, so AI Deal Flow. It's about 100 VCs who are investing in AI, and they're sharing deals with each other, sharing thoughts with each other. There's another group I belong to we don't run, but my friend Simon Lancaster at Omni Ventures runs, called Beyond Emerging Managers. It's for emerging managers, new VCs, to talk to each other.
Right.
Hey, which law firm did you use? Which accounting firm did you use? All this collaboration back and forth. And I personally actually host regular emerging manager happy hours in Palo Alto so that the new VCs can really get together and get to know each other. And meanwhile, I support my fellow emerging managers. I go speak at their events and things like that. So I think especially at the emerging manager level, especially at the smaller VC level, there's a tremendous amount of collaboration because we realize we're all in this together and we can help each other.
Absolutely. So your new fund is going to be how big?
So we're targeting 35 million. We've raised about 23 million so far. We got another 4 or 5 million we'll be closing on soon. Trying to finish by the end of the year.
And so how many, that portfolio, how much dry powder are you thinking about? Like
so we have called about 32% of the fund so far, but of course as we add new LPs, that will then fund new investments. We've done our first 9 or 10 investments, so we think we're about a third of the way through building the portfolio. We do have a standard reserve strategy, 50-50, so we do expect to follow on, because investing early stage, you got to stay in the deal.
So how do you think, let's go to like some macroeconomics and some maybe even geopolitical kind of questions. So how do you think about, let's talk about our competitiveness as a country. And all this technology is being democratized, right? And it used to be like in Europe, like they were really looking to come to the States quickly, right? From a distribution, from a customer base standpoint. Is that the case anymore? Like you have Lovable in Sweden, right? And they just went 0 to the 120 million and they just raised, they had a big raise. And I can't remember what the valuation was, but I think it was $1 billion plus.
I'm pretty sure it was, yes.
So how do you think about that? What is that going to look like in terms of companies? Who's going to win? Well, nobody knows the United States is going to win this race, right? Let's just say that. But we've got to keep our pedal to the metal.
Absolutely.
If you're not first, you're last, as Ricky Bobby says.
It's a Ricky Bobby market. And, by the way, I think that it's also the case that other countries are going to have what I call sovereign AI. They're going to support their own local AI industry. Because if you sort of think about it, if AI is the technology that's going to power your entire economy and all of it's done by American companies, you ever get into disagreement in the United States or the president just looks at you funny, in theory, they could cut that off. And cripple your economy in a single move. So that's why it's logical for companies, at least as a backup, have some level of local development of AI, some level of open source, that sort of thing, et cetera. However, it is 100% the case that the United States, and even especially Silicon Valley, remain sort of the center of things, especially when it comes to AI. If you're not a Chinese company, it's tough to crack the China market. If you're not an Indian company, it's tough to crack the India market. The American market is one of the few where people can come from anywhere in the world and build their companies. One of our portfolio companies, Crew AI, is a great example. It's one of the stars of our portfolio. It's a Brazilian company, founded in Brazil less than 2 years ago. It's currently in use by over 60% of the Fortune 500. It's an AI agent framework for the enterprise, open source, so it spreads very easily, but it's a platform that people build on. One of the things we love to see is that people are now posting job requirements for their company saying, you must have experience with Crew AI. That's an example of something that's clearly becoming an emerging platform. And this is a company, it's a Brazilian company, we found them, we invested in them, but The founder has moved to Silicon Valley. The majority of the new hires are Silicon Valley because that's just where you can grow the market the fastest.
So let's talk about H-1Bs.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of chatter about that right now.
Oh, yes.
In previous companies I've had, we hired folks in H-1B visas.
Yeah.
And it was already expensive. Like, you got to find an attorney, you got to go through the paperwork. I was talking to one of our congressmen just about a week ago, and maybe I'm hoping this was just kind of floated out there on $100,000
We'll
a
see.
year it came out, and then maybe
And then it backed up to 100,000 one time. And it was like, oh no, if you're out of the country and you're on an existing, don't worry about it. You don't have to pay it again. Even though, again, people like Amazon had their lawyers go through it with a fine-tooth comb and said, oh shit, get back into the country now. Don't leave.
Yes.
And they're like, no, actually, we're changing it. So,
And
bottom
that's
line.
just spread the gap. If there's some big cost, that's going to hurt the startup, the
Exactly.
innovation.
Bottom line, it's a bad idea.
Yeah.
It's a bad idea in general because there should be no barriers to bringing the best and the brightest from around the world to the United States. Full stop. Everyone knows the majority of companies are started by immigrants or children of immigrants. The United States is a country of immigrants. What sets us apart from so many of these other countries around the world, in Europe and Asia or what have you, is that we don't determine who's an American by what they look like. We determine who's an American based on their desire to be a part of this great country. And so putting up barriers to the smartest people, hey, look, I think that immigration reform is very needed. Having an immigration system where people said, oh, well, we'll just let people in illegally, that's fine. That's crazy talk. But the best and the brightest should come here. They want to come here. We should encourage that. And again, over and over again, you just look, even some of the people like, obviously, Elon Musk was allowed to come to this country. Peter Thiel was allowed to come to this country. Some of the people who supported these policies, they came to the country as immigrants. So, as you pointed out, it's hardest of all for startups. Startups can't afford $100,000.
It's hard to afford $10,000 for the attorney.
Exactly.
It actually might be 20 or 30.
Mark Zuckerberg's spending $100 million per employee in some cases. He's not going to care.
Right.
But the startup is.
Yeah, absolutely.
So hopefully, I agree with you. Hopefully, we will see saner policies, saner heads prevail, because this country needs as much brain power as it can get.
Yep. How about chip reshoring?
Mm-hmm.
You know, manufacturing, chip manufacturing. You know, we have rare earth materials, all those types of things. The race, the chip war. You know, on the right chips, the chips that can process the fastest, the most efficient. You know, 3D stacking and async and all this kind of stuff. What do you think's going? What do you think about that? NVIDIA, are they going to keep there?
Absolutely. Two things are true. The first is 100% we should attempt to reshore some of the chip industry. This is strategic, it's national security, and we need the ability to make this stuff in our borders. 100%. The second thing is it's not easy to do that. It's going to take a while. And we still need Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation to run our economy.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're getting close to the end here, and I want to move into some rapid-fire questions in a moment. Before we do that, is there anything that we haven't covered today that you want to share with the listeners?
The standard thing that we always do on every podcast, which is to say, if you've been enjoying the conversation, if you want to hear more or learn more, one of the easy things to do is just look for Chris Yeh. You can go to chrisyeh.com. That's CHRISYEH.com. And that will give you a pointer to where I am on social media. Most of the time, if I'm announcing something, it's going to be announced on LinkedIn. So you should follow me on LinkedIn as well. And other than that, just always interested in hearing from the best and the brightest and the smartest people in the world.
And if somebody wants to invest in your new fund, is that the best way to find you?
Yeah, absolutely. They can just find me, connect with me on LinkedIn, or send a message through my website and say, hey, I'm interested in Blitzscaling Ventures. I'd love to learn more.
Okay, that's awesome. If there is something in your industry, and you can pick any industry, anything at all, so whether it's VC or some type of industry with software or whatever, if there's anything that you think people should stop doing, what would it be?
All right. So when it comes to the VC industry, the thing that I would like people to stop doing is just obsessing over and over again with this notion of social proof. Social proof is a fancy way of saying, well, other guys are doing it, so I guess it's a good idea. Like, we come up with all these fancy terms. Social proof for it's popular. Pattern matching for educated guesswork. We're trying to dress it up and make it sound more systematic than it is. I think it's really important for venture capitalists to have conviction, to say, I believe this. I don't care if other people aren't in it. My first question about a company should not be, hey, who's in it?
Right.
My first question should be, what are they doing? How are they adding value? What's their traction? Not who's in the deal.
I love that. How about what would be a one way or a trait that you think someone would need that leads to the best ability to disrupt themselves?
This is a good one. All right, so you can actually get the extended version of this on YouTube because I have a TEDx talk about becoming an infinite learner. So infinite learner is a term that Reed and I came up with in Blitzscaling. We talk about it briefly, but I've expanded on it since then. Because everyone just hears infinite learner and says, yeah, of course, I don't want to be a crummy finite learner. I want to be an infinite learner. But what does it actually mean? What it means is not just the willingness to learn new things. It's the willingness to unlearn old things, to unlearn the lessons of past success.
Yep.
And this is really challenging because we're really proud of our past successes. Oftentimes our past successes become part of our identity. Right? I tell people, oh, I started this company or I built this company. Yeah, great, fantastic. That's a part of my identity. But that doesn't mean I have to honor that identity by doing things exactly the same way.
Yep.
The world's different. I started my first company in 1999. I can't follow the same playbook today in 2025. And it would be idiotic if I did. So what I think you should look for is the ability to unlearn the lessons of past success, to be able to look at it and say, let me stay grounded with the here and now. What I care about is what I'm going to do in the future. And if that means I had to do things differently than I did in the past, that's okay. Because I am an infinite learner.
I love that. That makes me think of, just real quick, I have one more question, but that makes me think of also, we all focus on the why, like Simon Sinek, like the why for our company. But a lot of times we forget to think about our individual
100%.
why. What are we about, right?
Yeah.
I love that. That's fascinating. So, okay, if you could wave a magic wand and solve any problem in the world with innovation, what would it be?
Oh, wow. There's so many there, but
True. There's a lot.
I would just say this is very, very cliched in some ways, but I think if we could solve energy, that's the most important thing. So in my talk today, I talked a little bit about the Industrial Revolution. People think about the Industrial Revolution as being about manufacturing and everything. It's actually about energy. Because if you think about it, 1 horsepower is a horse.
Right.
Our cars have like 300 horsepower. They're using a huge amount of energy relative to what we did in the past. And the only reason we're able to do this is because we're burning fossil fuels for the most part.
Yep.
So solving energy so that everyone in the world could live an energy-rich life with AI helping them, with the kinds of things that we're used to experiencing here in the United States, that would be phenomenal. Right now, we don't have the energy reserves to do it. We got to develop it. We got to develop nuclear. We got to develop fusion. We got to develop all these different things. That's the one sort of underpinning that has to happen.
Okay, now I promise we'll stop asking questions.
No,
we'll
you
talk
can
for
ask as
8
many as
hours.
you like.
This is awesome. You just mentioned fusion.
Yes.
And I find that so fascinating. How close do you think we are to being able to do, well, number one, do you think it's possible? Number two, well, anything's possible, I guess, at some point. And then I guess number two, how far away do you think, like nuclear fusion, like absolute clean energy, how far away do you think we truly are?
So we'll have to apply sort of gambling rules to this and sort of go with an over-under. And then we'll apply one of my other heuristics, which is to say, okay, let's go with powers of 10. So over-under for a number of years until we have nuclear fusion that's actually commercially producing power. And so I'm like, okay, over-under 1 year, definitely under. We are not getting commercial fusion in the next year. Very unlikely. Over-under 10 years. I'm like, I'm still probably going under, but now it's starting to seem a little more possible. There's a lot of interesting approaches that are happening right now. Over-under 100 years, 100% over. We'll definitely have it within 100 years. We've made so much progress. So where does that leave us? Probably in a couple of decades, but the problem is, people have said nuclear fusion's always 20 years away, and they've been saying that for the past 70 years. So that's the tricky part. But I will also quote one of my friends, Mike Cassidy, who was one of the founders of Apollo Fusion. And what he told me was, you know, working in fusion, I can't tell you, more often than ever before, I think to myself, we have no idea how to do this. We're never going to be able to make this. It's just so hard. It's so impossible. And then the next day it's like, oh my God, this is the most transformative thing that we've ever done. I can't believe how amazing this is. The world is going to change. We're going to have fusion reactors the size of washing machines, powering entire cities. And the fact is, there's just so much variance. But here's what I would tell people. You know what else people said was 20 years away for decade after decade after decade? Artificial intelligence.
Yep.
And if you went to people in
And
20...
we heard about it for years. Decades.
We've been hearing about AI since 1955. And in 2015, if you ask people, when's AI going to come? They would have said, no chance. People would have said 5 years from now, 6 years from now. And it came and it hit. And I was following OpenAI all along. GPT-1, terrible. GPT-2, still terrible. GPT-3, barely recognizable as sounding vaguely like a human. GPT 3.5, all of a sudden it worked.
Yeah.
So stuff can happen.
Yeah.
And I just want us to have the chance for good stuff to happen.
I love it, Chris. You are in a plethora of intelligence. It's been an absolute pleasure meeting you. And thank you for coming to Rally. Thank you for spreading your knowledge, your domain expertise. Thank you for coming on Innovate or Evaporate. Again, people want to reach out to you. How do they find you?
Like, just look for Chris Yeh, ChrisYeeh. You can go to chrisyeh.com, or if you go to any social network and look up Chris Yeh, you'll probably find me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. And until next time on Innovate or Evaporate, we'll see you soon.